Hello, friends. My name's Mike O'Brien, director of the Vineyard School of Worship. Our summer session is returning live this June 2022 in Columbus, Ohio. The summer session is for worship leaders age 18 to 35 that want to take their gifts to the next level. They need refreshment. They need encouragement. This is the event for you. Our faculty lineup is so good, I can't even begin to list all the incredible people we have. You're not going to want to miss it. So send your worship leader, send somebody, anybody that is in that age bracket for training and equipping. It's going to be incredible. For those who register early, host homes will be available to you, and most meals are provided. Go to vsow.org, use the code FERMENT15 for 15% off. We'll see you at summer session. Send somebody, send anybody. Take care.
You're listening to the Ferment Podcast, conversations about worship and transformation. Today's guest is Rian Emano, creative director at the Vineyard of Hope Church in Walnut, California.
Well, hello, everyone. Welcome to the Ferment Podcast. I am not Adam Russell. I am your guest host today, Melissa Keller, along with producer Casey Coram.
In front of the mic this time. We'll see how this goes.
That's right. Woo woo. And our very, very special guest, Rian Emano.
What up?
Yeah.
Hello.
Woo.
Thanks
so
for having
exciting.
me.
Yeah, so good to have you. We're in SoCal at the Brea Canyon studio,
That's right.
Casey's studio,
That's right.
recording live. It's sunny outside. We ate some sushi. What'd you have for lunch, Rian?
I had some awesome fried chicken.
Fried chicken.
It's very tasty.
Some really good food around here. We were just talking about that,
Yes. Yeah, all the food. Before I moved to California, I was all about the tacos, but now living here in this like very Asian predominant community, it's all about the different types of Asian food I can find, especially Taiwanese food.
huh? Ooh.
If you come out here, Taiwanese food out here slaps. It's so
Ooh.
good.
We should go. Let's
We
go
should
after
get
this.
some dumplings.
Yeah, I'm ready. I'm ready for that. Okay, well, welcome again. Let's start how we always do, yeah?
Sure.
Why don't you tell us about yourself, Ryan? Who are you? Where are you from? How'd you grow up? All the fun things.
Yeah. So I grew up in a Filipino household in Northern Virginia. My dad was in the military, so we moved around quite a bit. So I grew up in like places, Hawaii, Massachusetts, Northern Virginia, and the longest place that I ever actually lived was in Maine. So
Awesome.
I grew up in the Dirty Lewiston, Maine.
The Dirty Lou.
Shout out.
Yes. Shout out Lewiston, Maine.
Yes. And honestly, like being in Maine was like some of my most formative years. So before coming to the Vineyard, when we moved to Maine, I predominantly grew up in a like Filipino Pentecostal church.
What was that like?
It was lots of shaking and baking. No kidding. High energy, zeal, and passion for the Lord. That's what I would say. I don't remember much of it being weird.
Okay.
I actually remember a lot of it being this hunger to worship Jesus.
What was like a setting like that? Like, well, first of all, how old were you when you were there? What was that age?
Yeah, so I remember that all the way from the very, very beginning, even from living in Hawaii as a 4-year-old. My mom was just telling my sister and I stories that my dad was actually like the worship director of this church plant. And actually one of the stories was they were worshiping, playing drum. He was playing drums at the time. And then all of a sudden, like as people were singing and praising, the drums just stopped. And the worship leader tried to look to the side, and my dad was just on his knees, just worshiping the Lord.
Oh my gosh.
It's
I
just
love
like
it.
really like that, and that's like my dad, right?
Oh,
Like
wow.
he just like has this incredible zeal for the Lord, and so I just remember like these moments of just like high praise spaces, and that was just our life. Like it was just full of music and worship, for as long as I could remember.
Okay, so like young childhood.
Young childhood, like every Saturday was a worship rehearsal, and in the mornings I remember growing up, going into church with my dad to set up like the drums and all the sound stuff.
How long would worship go on in those places? Do you know? I mean, in your child mind, days.
Forever.
Yeah, I was gonna say I just remember church in general being like 2 to 3 hours,
Oh my gosh.
and it's like Filipino church, so we've got like a big party afterwards with tons of food.
Oh, I love that.
Yes,
We need more of that in
Yeah.
every church.
absolutely. So yeah, I just grew up with ministry as like a part of my life. My dad never talked about the titles he held in church, so I just thought we did church as part of life. And that was the same thing when we moved to Maine in this new context, where there were opportunities for myself to start volunteering and joining in on things. So I remember being in 6th grade, starting to play, keyboard for our kids ministry worship, and then doing that into our youth group and starting to lead worship there. So worship is a big part of the context of growing as a creative. But somewhere in high school, I started to fall in love with filmmaking and just telling stories through videos. And that became like my main expression of creativity. And I just started to do random videos for our youth group in high school.
When was your Vineyard transition? Because you were in the Filipino Pentecostal church.
Yep.
And then when did you guys transition? Did your whole family transition to Vineyard or just
Yeah,
you?
s-
What
yeah,
that look like?
yeah. So we were in that Filipino church culture up until 06 when we moved to Maine. My dad did research. He's known about the Vineyard, but he found Pathway Vineyard Church in Lewiston, Maine. And so we started to go there, mainly because they had a Christian school.
Okay.
And so I was homeschooled up until that point, and then started going to the Christian school. And then we started also going to church there. And I know for my parents, that was a very big culture shock. It was a lot different for me. But for my parents, that was also a grieving moment of just like losing some context and going into something totally different.
Yeah.
But with my parents, it's not like you just kind of church hop. We just kind of like stuck roots because like if we were going to go to this school, we should
right.
just be invested into the church.
Yeah.
And if we're going to be invested in the church, we're just going to do life in ministry here.
And not a lot of Filipino Pentecostal churches in Maine.
No, and not a lot of Filipinos.
So you just dug in all of
So we
you.
just dug in, and my whole family, and I'm just very grateful because that's like, from what I remember of being formed in my love for Jesus happened, even in kids ministry, like being able to worship in church.
So at the risk of making myself feel old, how old are you in 06?
06, I was 12.
Oh my goodness.
12.
All right.
That's right.
Moment of silence. Okay, so 12 years old, intersecting the Vineyard, and obviously you lived a life of ministry. It's kind of baked in because your parents
right.
are super deep involved in whatever church. Church isn't just about attending a church. Church is
Right.
about getting involved, which of course suits the Vineyard context quite well. Everybody
Yeah.
gets to play. So again, you started to describe you got involved in worship ministry. So like your journey into the Vineyard. Can you unpack that for us a little bit? Like in terms of opportunities for ministry?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. All of my life, I've been in situations and brought into ministry just because of leaders encouraging me and seeing me. So that's a big part of my story. And so with worship and just like being on the team to then like leading worship, and then just being like a student leader in youth group, a lot of that just happened to be with just saying yes when someone invited me into something, and just like gratefully my leaders just like seeing the things within me and my friends calling that out and taking risks on us and just like giving us room to like lead as well. So I say I'm a Vineyard guinea pig.
Love
And
it.
so growing up, I don't know if people on the podcast are familiar with like Project Timothy. It's a Vineyard.
I'll put it in the show notes.
There you go.
Thanks.
Youth student boot camp, summer boot camp. And so I did like 4 years of that. At the time, they were developing this discipleship program for the Vineyard called Heroic Leadership Institute, and I was in the pioneer years of that as well. And so a lot of my story and how I grew up in like my theology and making of Jesus Christ has to do with like being a part of those test labs of curriculum and programs. So
That's great. That's great.
That's either great timing or terrible.
yeah, exactly. It was
Probably
both.
probably a
and
mix. Yeah,
it
probably
was
a
like
mix.
it was really great experience, but I also like barely did or had homework because they were still trying to
You're
figure
like,
out.
we haven't hit this before.
Yeah,
What do we do?
exactly. And so throughout high school, still going to that same Vineyard and Vineyard private school, and immediately after, we hosted that discipleship program, HLI. And before then, I thought, I have all this like creativity in me that's kind of cool, but there's no real place outside of just like playing on the worship team. Like there's context for creativity.
Yeah.
And in going to other churches and hearing from other, even like Vineyard lead pastors like Michael Gatlin and Mark Tyndall, my mind expanded because of seeing like artists that turn to lead pastors, or just like pastors and people in ministry just loving the arts and creativity. And so it started to like grow my context that like, okay, I think there is space to be a creative within church.
So up until this point, you were serving in worship teams. I think you mentioned a minute ago about making videos.
Yep.
And so you're basically, most of your context for creativity was in the context of the church was this music stuff.
Totally.
Except for maybe some invitations to make some videos. But the video stuff started before like invitations from the church.
Yeah. I was just, in youth group, you can almost do anything.
Well, true.
So we were just like making really hilarious, poor quality videos for our youth group. And that was my context of growing in video producing. But then as I started to take like multimedia more seriously in that discipleship program, I got to like see how we could tell stories through other parts of the church. Okay. And so that started to develop. And in that time, though, with graduating from HLI, I had a friend that worked for the church. I remember him pulling me aside close to graduation. And he was like, hey, I want to give you my job. He was the multimedia director at the time. And I just remember like immediately shutting it down, unfortunately, and just kind of just like laughing, because in that context, in that season, being a creative within the church wasn't taken seriously, and almost like, your creative dreams would die because of just because of the context and time.
Well, I can understand that. So in this kind of like walking through these doors of creativity, do you have like a bigger picture of like what you wanted to do, or even a sense of like something the Lord was like calling you to, or like, is it like creative life versus ministry life, and
yes,
feeling like you have to choose?
Totally.
Okay.
Yeah. In that season between 18 years old and 19, it was like, well, I feel this call to be a pastor and maybe even like lead a church one day. But if I do that, well, I got to die to myself and my creativity so that I'm only using this one side of my brain, and I got to do that. But why is that like not life-giving? Why do whenever I try to like make that decision in my head, I'm like losing a part of my soul. And so as I was meeting different creatives and pastors, I was just like realizing, right, that like my identity is in Christ first. And as I'm made in the image of God, the ultimate creator, like I just want to like be able to recreate from the ways that like he showed us all around us, like this creativity. And really breaking off that lie that I couldn't be creative and pastoral. But really like just from who I am, like the Lord has made me, creative and pastoral.
Yeah.
Right. What you're saying reminds me of just the fact that we need mentors, or we need models, right? So
Yes.
we need it's cool to hear you say that when we actually meet people that are both and, like you're
Yes.
describing. It's
Yes.
like, it expands our imagination and gives us, it's like, these two things are not fighting with each other.
Yeah.
I love that. Yeah.
Can we go to this idea of creative? We know you have, as like, you talked about musician. I played all the instruments and then I started to get into video. Let's talk about this video storytelling side, because that's the Rian I met first, right, was video storytelling. So let's talk about that, how that was birthed and how that kind of grew and what went on there.
Yeah. So a lot of this started with me just saying yes to opportunities, even if I didn't know I could like accomplish something. So our friend James Moscardini, he was just on the podcast. I remember him sharing a story of like, I was gonna play bass for this one event, but I don't even know how to play bass. So for me, my yes was to filmmaking, or even just showing up with a camera and just wanting to document things. I started creating through filmmaking because I wanted to get away with not having to write papers in high school.
Yes.
Genius.
Awesome.
And I, for some reason...
There was iMovie.
Yes, there was iMovie. And it was just so much fun to like just tell whatever stories, in front of me for school. And then like within youth group, like I loved music and I wanted to create music videos. And so the only thing that I really knew how to do was like make parody music videos to like promote youth group events.
Oh my gosh. That's
And
awesome.
so a lot of the things that like we created when I was young was just a lot of like funny, hilarious event videos, like music videos, but it was just like the process of making that was just like so fun because I got to incorporate music and video.
And so you just kept doing that?
Kept doing that until I started to get into quote unquote like more serious stuff, creating other videos for our broader church, and then also into wedding filmmaking. So after high school and getting into college and just kind of trying to find my path as a filmmaker, this new form of like storytelling for weddings, wedding highlight videos was popping up. And that was something that was that I could easily like grab towards. And I just fell in love with that medium because it wasn't about trying to think about like this crazy like film that like you're gonna like storyboard and create before you get there, but actually it was about like creatively documenting the moments that were happening in front of you.
I love that.
And I think that's where I feel the most myself as a creative and storyteller, is when I get to be aware of the creative moments that are happening in front of me and just telling the truth. And even showing pieces and sacred moments that like we would miss because we didn't have to pay attention.
That's so good. So you found inspiration in these wedding videos.
Yeah.
And then what happened next?
Yeah, so I kept doing that. That got me to do a lot of traveling. And then I started getting into business promo videos and little small business things here and there. One year I had an opportunity to go help film in Kansas City, where my sister was living at the time. And in that moment, like being there for this discipleship program to film, there was also CauseCon.
That's right.
Which is a young adult conference for the Vineyard. And I got to meet, friends like Jason and other people. And we didn't really know like that we were going to maybe create a music video for some of these things, but the opportunity came to us. So I remember capturing that event and being hired to create a music video for that. And then just out of my pure passion, like the last night of the conference, I made like a quick highlight video and we shared it and gave it to Multiply Vineyard, who was running the event. And that's how I got into like creating like highlight event videos for the Vineyard. And so through that context and through saying yes to random things, and even like before my yes to other people, just saying like this passion that I had to just want to create, it got me into the door of just like different creative opportunities. but with gifting, right? Like,
Yeah.
I know Lance Pitluck says this a lot. Like, gifting will get you into the door, but character will
Keep you there.
you
will
there.
keep you there.
Yeah.
And so, through all of this, I just had so many mentors and people in my life that kept me in check, because it wasn't about the gifting. It was people calling out the character in me, and also just like in mentoring me and helping me shape really like the way I tell stories because of like how I was growing versus the talent that I had. My dear friend Dan Wilt and mentor, he at the time was inviting me to anything that he could to help creatively document the moments and pieces that were happening in the vineyard.
That's cool. Yeah, you've done some retreat videos for us.
Retreat
and
videos.
Rise
I
videos.
yeah, and I was like a fly on the wall in a lot of like leadership meeting things where we needed to document a few things.
That's so cool.
It's really crazy because, yeah, I actually got to hang out with you guys quite a bit.
That's how we met.
Yeah.
Is all your training, are you just kind of self-taught? Is this just like, is it kind of like, you've obviously learned it while you've done it, right?
Yeah.
Is it learned by doing and self-taught, or?
Yeah, learn by doing, self-taught, YouTube. But early on, I've had like many people in my life, guys like Thomas McCallick, who's, you know, in New Jersey, or, you know, I cut my teeth in Maine at Anchor Studio, just helping out with some video stuff. So the opportunities came as I just said yes to do the little things. And so growing from different people, watching a lot of YouTube videos. Yeah.
YouTube, you can find anything there.
You
That's
can.
true. That's true.
Yeah, and it's
helpful.
just doing it. Like a lot of the things that I found in the way that I created was I loved something on, you know, that I saw, especially like when it came to like music videos, and then just trying to emulate that into the other genres of videos I was creating. So a lot of like me learning, and I say this to a lot of people learning to edit, you know, it's like try copying something that you absolutely love online and just edit the same way. And then take your own content and edit the same way, just so you're learning the techniques of editing. And then through that process of doing the stuff, you ultimately create like your own style through like your own, you know,
I
through your
love
own
that.
voice.
You talk about that a lot, like kind of emulating and, right? As far as songwriting stuff too, right? It's kind of like gives you some training wheels and some framework,
Right.
you know, to teach you how to.
Well, it's like art composition classes. Like I think it's whether we're in collegiate environments or not, like that's the pathway of the artist, isn't it? To study the greats, even if the greats are just people that inspire us, you know. And I think it's good, like you're saying yes and following your passion into these things is what keeps you interested in the first place into digging into these styles of video or different editing styles.
Yeah.
I think that's great advice. I love that.
Yeah, it's really good. Yeah, it reminds me of Rian, when, like the last time we saw you at the national conference, you wouldn't realize this, but so earlier you talked about maybe feeling calling as a pastor, but then you've got this creative thing happening in you. In the national conference, I remember every time I saw you, so Rian filmed at our national conference in October, and he had a team around him. And I don't know if you noticed this, but you had you had disciples around you the entire time whenever we saw you working.
Yeah.
So your job was to go and film and shoot all the different things that are happening. But you had this team that just looked up to you, that you were encouraging. Everyone had a smile on their face the whole time. And I'm bringing this up because of people in this. And I just want to say, like, I've seen you do this. So I would love for you to share kind of your heart. I think you kind of, maybe this started stirring in Kansas City when you were there, because I remember we had a conversation about it there.
Yeah.
And it was kind of stirring, but I've also seen it in action. So I'd love to hear more of your heart on that.
Yeah. A lot of this stems from how I was raised by the different leaders and mentors I've had along the way. And so in my life, there was always someone like encouraging me and calling out the things that they saw in me. And so I only can do that now in whatever lane I'm in, whether that's in creative direction or filmmaking, because I was encouraged as a young kid because of that. And so for me, discipleship is just part of what we do. And so, I mean, we looked to Jesus, obviously, and how he did that. But I have a lot of nurse friends. There's this phrase that they use is see one, do one, teach one. And so as I'm doing this stuff, early on when I was just like the only video person, that's what it felt like. It got lonely. And then I just got burned out because, you know, I was just the only one kind of like creating some of this stuff. So part of it was like, you know, Kingdom Creative Culture promotes community. So I just like had always wanted to like do this with people. So that's part of this discipleship thing. Two, I mean, like a friend of mine just like said to me early on was like, well, what if you got hit by a bus? It's like, then like, you know, have you been able to give away the things that you've like learned? So I just think it's important that like we're always giving away what we have. And so I try to always have an intern if I can, or if I'm going to a conference or a job, I would like always love to just bring someone along with me so that they're just catching something new as they're like doing this stuff.
That's great.
I love that. So you were discipled. There's a mixture in the church here in your story, which is given opportunities primarily in the music space, but then you have some, you know, some talent and some interest and some passion towards these videos that get you invitations to do more. And then that leads to client work and then employment, actual jobs. Now there's the flip of that where you're seeing others come up and you're recognizing the talent. And now you've taken another job. We've overlapped here with at Vineyard of Hope here in Walnut,
That's
California, where we're recording this at Break Canyon Studios here, which I'm happy to be here most days. And Ryan, you're the new creative director here
as of January.
January,
so 3 months.
Okay, so obviously this is not the first time you've inhabited a similar role. You know, given your journey and given your experience, and even things that the Lord has opened, like you said, you're on fly on the wall at all these vineyard events, and you know, in a vineyard context, what did Dan Wilt said? You have a vineyard heart and a
Yeah. He mentioned I have a vineyard heart, storyteller's mind, and a kingdom lens.
I love that.
Yeah, that's great. So with that, can you paint a picture for what you're envisioning even here, maybe using Vineyard of Hope as a little bit of a template?
Yeah.
For, kind of, you know, raising the ceiling of creative work, telling compelling stories, raising other people up, seeing people come into their own gifting. We haven't really touched on this, but like now you're in a Asian American vineyard environment here, which you and I have talked about. That's an unusual experience, especially in the context of the vineyard. I'm just throwing a bunch of things at you to say, you know, your role as creative director here at Vineyard of Hope, maybe paint a picture for what's coming out of your heart.
Yeah, that's so good. There's so much I want to just like word vomit right now. But the two things come to mind when I think about the why behind just being a creative director for myself. I remember Adam Russell saying a long time ago, like, you know, let the artist be found in the church or they'll be lost in the world. And so one, I want to give every opportunity to like the young Rian I was to see that there is space for creatives and artists to be a safe place to create and a safe place to learn why they're creative and knowing they have a place to express said art. And two, with storytelling and communicating, a lot of my role directing messages and in the context of communication and creativity, I believe, you know, my role is to help shape and tell the vision of the church. In doing that, as a communicator, I'm part historian, part storyteller, and part prophet. My hope is that everyone's a storyteller, and we get to help tell the stories of our own local churches through that model, like historian, storyteller, and prophet. So those three things, like as a historian, when we're telling stories, we get to know where we came from as a local church, the story of how we started. Storyteller in the present, where we're telling the story and expressing like what God is doing now in our local church. And through that, we're part prophetic because we get to help call out and bring out the things of like where the Lord is taking us. Mm-hmm. And in all the ways that we communicate for the church, that's where I come from, is just seeing, because like, you know, if we believe that God is moving, always moving around us, then I'm just trying to be aware of what he's already doing and just telling that story.
So good.
So.
That's so good. Wow.
Well, I hear a lot of echoes in this current role towards, you know, like the wedding film work is like this documentarian work and sort of like not dictating what the story will be. Like, no. Can we, you know, can the bride come back in? And I didn't get my angle right. You're actually, you know, you're responding to the environment, but then there's also these bigger stories, whether it's history of the church, like Vineyard of Hope, or it's, or people's testimonial history, or, you know, literally the story of the gospel, you know. So well, so I hear unique. Isn't this how God works? Where like he puts these different opportunities in your life towards the next thing that you're doing.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah, that's great. I love that.
So you have this bit. I mean, what you're saying is beautiful, and like I'd love to see that in every church, right? So, what would you say to maybe pastors that are like, how in the world do I not let the artists get away? Or how do I find a Rian?
Yeah, I would say that they are probably in your community already. We just have to ask the Lord to just share and highlight the people that we could entrust to and take risks with. So there's probably, I mean, a young Gen Z kid that's probably really great at TikTok. And honestly, like whether like we really have like a plan for that or not, just inviting them into that everyone gets to play, right? And so I think it's less about trying to like get things right at the first part, but just like taking risks on who we have and discipling people into storytellers, because there's probably someone that already has that within them.
Yeah, it's cool to see your story and how this has come to be and how it's flourished, just like he was saying, through all these different, like God's like, and here's the next thing and the next thing. But you're just such a unique, you are pastoral. Like you actually think of this in a very pastoral way. It'll be interesting to see what that looks like next, right? And the next kind of step, because it's very pastoral the way you think about it. It's very big picture the way you think about it. Yeah, I'm really encouraged by it.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Hey, Ryan, would you mind maybe praying for the creatives and, well, specifically the Vineyard, but, you know, and then with an eye towards young creatives, and maybe that's kind of how we wrap our conversation here.
Yeah.
Would you mind doing that?
That's great. So God, I just thank you for this opportunity to just share and to hopefully speak to other creatives out there. And so I pray that if anyone listening feels this call to disciple creatives and to call them out, Lord, may you just continue to highlight people around them so that we can continue to tell your story, Lord. And I pray for anyone that has felt lost or hurt by the church. I just pray for an invitation back to you, Jesus, and an invitation to create again in the context of the Vineyard and in the Big C Church. We just pray for more creativity to be unlocked here, Father. Amen.
Amen. Well, thanks, Rian.
Thank you.
You're awesome. We've just scratched the surface. We need to have another conversation.
Sounds good.
Good
All right.
times.
Peace.
Hey everyone, Casey Corum here, producer of the podcast. Thanks for listening. As always, if you've been enjoying the podcast, here's a few ways you can help us. First of all, leave us a review on the podcast platform of your choice. This helps more people find us. Also, connect with us on social media. Instagram at The Ferment Podcast and Twitter at FermentCast. All right, everyone. Thanks for listening. See you next week. Peace.